Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Ira. Hi, Biola. Hi, hi, hi. Hi. Hello, hello. Thanks for joining. Ira, I'm just going to bring you on immediately. Hello, hello. Hi, how you doing? Hello. Hello, Statoing. How you doing? Hi, Ira. How you doing? Nice to have you. Nice to have you. Nice to have you. Ira, have you sent your request? I think I got it once. Can you send it again? Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Tell me how you're doing. Tell me how you're doing. Just to get in the hang of this, yeah. Tell me how you're doing. That's
Aunty
you.
T.
I'm still getting the hang of this, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I've got my PC top on, but you
Oh,
can't see it.
really?
I'm gonna do that.
Ah,
See?
lovely. Motivational
I've
top.
got to, I've got to show you. I'm representing. I'm
Love that.
representing here. I'm representing here. It's so nice. It's so nice to see. I'm going to see how I can get my camera so I can get a bit more of myself in this. In this. How have you been? How
I've
have you
been
been?
I've been good. Like I said to you, I think a while back, 2020 was a very interesting year.
For
Lots of
everybody?
changes, lots of new things happening. And
Yeah.
now 2021, I'm looking forward to more. Hoping for another good and successful year on all fronts, really.
Am I going to get more goals this year?
Uh, By God's grace, loads more.
Anyway, let's say hi to our guys. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Rory. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Young and Strong episode 3. We've had episode 1 when we had Abby. We had episode 2 where we had Tony. And we've been having some very, very interesting conversations with young people. Like I tell everyone, Young and Strong is not about me coming on here and coming to have some talk about the adult talking to the young. This is about you guys talking to us. And that follows from the scripture that is the basis for this, which is from 1 John 2:14, which says, I speak to you, young people, because you are strong and you've overcome the evil one, and God is on the inside of you. And that's what I believe this is about. And that's why, I mean, tonight I'm really excited because I've got one of my favorite people on here, you know? And like I said, for the people that didn't see us, I said I'm representing, so I'm going to show you my camera. I'm just not going to turn it to the back because at the back, I've got my name on it on
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
I've got Aunty T at the back of it as well. So it's nice to see. I can see some of your guys are joining in as well.
Yes, yes.
So we're saying hi, we're saying hi, we're saying hi to everyone. So let's just get right into it. So Ira, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell us
Um,
about who is Ira Jackson Jr.
okay, well, I don't know where to start. I do a lot of things, but one of the things that people know me for the most is I'm a professional footballer for Grimsby Town.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I say, that happened in the summer, August 2020. So that was something I've been working towards for a really long time. And God helped me to make it happen last year. That season before was a really, really successful season. So I thank God that even in COVID, managed to get to a great club like Grimsby. And then outside of football, I do a lot of other stuff. I own a business slash movement called PC London. I'm also
Again,
wearing
I'm telling guys I'm representing. Okay.
yeah, I'm also
Okay.
representing something that's going to be coming out soon in a beanie hat, and then our latest release, which is part of my personal signature collection called It's All Love. So I do that. I also mentor. I'm into music as well and reading and writing as well. So yeah, that's pretty much a lot of the stuff that I do. I do personal development plans for people as well, whether football related or just general, they want to get fit and healthy and stuff like that. So I do that on the side. So yeah, a lot of a lot of stuff.
You're making me tired just listening to everything that you everything that you do. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's get to it. So that's Ira, everyone, a man of many parts, or should I say, a young man of many parts, and that's
Mm.
really good. But let's talk about young people, which is I know is something you're passionate about. It's something I'm passionate about. And
Yeah.
over time, this is something I keep asking, and it's something I'm really, really interested in. So, as a young man, and of course, I've known you for a couple of years now, what would you say are the main challenges that young people have these days, apart from everybody facing COVID? But what would you say are the challenges that young people have these days that we should understand and we should know about?
I think one of the biggest challenges we have is this assumed success that we're supposed to have. Um, there's a bar that nobody seems to know who's set, but we're supposed to for some reason reach it. And obviously on social media, it's even worse in the sense of not because we want to compare ourselves, but because we're exposed to it so much. I think comparison is one of the biggest things in this generation, which forces us, in a sense, to accelerate our lives to a level that we're not supposed to be going at, or even that we're not ready for. So we end up starting ventures for the sake of wanting to feel like we're doing something, or wanting to feel like we're achieving, when really it's just out of the fact that we're comparing ourselves to who somebody we see who apparently is an overnight success, but what we don't know is that they've been working at that for 5, 10, maybe 15 years. And it's something that, because you don't see the toil on social media, you just see the result, you just see the triumph. So not many people are going to show you the time when they wanted to give up. Not many people are going to show you the time when they had to borrow money off of a family member to kickstart their business or whatever. They're just going to show you where they are at the end. And I think in this generation, because we're exposed to so much success, we assume that success happens straight away. And I think
Uh-huh.
that's one of the biggest killers for our generation, is that, especially like a lot of people that see me, if I didn't show my journey or tell people about my journey and express that it wasn't just at the click of a finger that I managed to achieve what I achieved, a lot of people would look at me and go, "Oh my gosh, like, look, see, I need to get like that. I need to just, Ira did it. It was overnight for Ira, so it can be overnight for me." But a lot of people have like spoken to me and about my story and how I got to where I got to, and because I'm so transparent with the fact that this took me a very long time. Like, this isn't something.
How long are we looking at, Ira? Because I mean, long time for you is different from me. If we're saying it took me a long time, we're talking a couple of decades. But we're talking about your generation here. So if we're talking about in comparison,
Yeah.
what would you say was like a while for you? I mean, people, like you said, they're talking about overnight success. And I'm
Yeah.
saying hi to everyone. I can see Dr. Nova, Cecilia, and a couple of people have joined us, and quite a number of your people have joined us as well. So, what would you say? And while they're waiting for this thing, what's a long time? What's a while? And while they're, what are the kind of things they get into thinking that this is going to help me get successful, but might be kind of like some form of foolishness? Hi, Graceling, how are you doing? What would you
Um,
say?
I think a long time is hugely based upon perspective. For me, what I've learned is that a long time in your eyes really isn't long at all. Um, so one of my biggest struggles is I'm very impatient, and I I wanted things to be done like this, and I had to learn that, look, nothing worth having happens straight away. Nothing worth achieving happens immediately, because you don't appreciate anything that you can get for free. And if you just click a finger and it happens, you're not going to value it as much. And I think this generation has to learn that, because anything a man can get for free, he isn't going to value. So the
Okay.
toil is part of the triumph. Like, your work that you're putting into it, the time, it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years. Like I say, in our generation, because everything's so microwave, we got social media. You hear the news before it goes on the news because of Twitter and Instagram. So we assume that things are supposed to happen within seconds. But
Right. Okay.
it's not realistic. It really isn't. And everything, there's a process of time with everything that happens. And I believe that it's not necessarily long, as in it's not going to take 20, 30 years, but it's usually going to be longer than you expected, especially in our generation, because our generation expects it to be like that within moments. And the majority of the time,
How do you keep yourself? I mean, because like you said, there's all this pressure. Everybody's saying you got to be this and you got to be that, and everywhere you look, it seems as if everybody's this and that. So how do you keep yourself during that period? During that period when you've got to kind of like, is it the word chill? Because you guys
yeah,
change your vocabulary all the time.
yeah,
So
we have to chill. Yeah.
how do you keep it together during that period when you want the stuff to happen, but it's not exactly going like the way you want it to? How, as a young man, as a young woman, do you
Mm.
keep it together till that time?
Well, one of the biggest things for me has been God anchoring me throughout everything. I can give the example of football because a lot of people will relate to that. I I worked for years. Like, obviously, I worked since I was started playing football, which is 4. But if we're going to talk about realistically, from the age of
Mhm.
16 to the age of where I am now, I worked to achieve a professional contract, because that was seen as almost the pinnacle, the start of a new level. So I was
Right.
working for that, and I'm seeing people achieve it, people that aren't as good as me, people that I know that maybe are as good as me, or people at different stages in their life, and I'm congratulating them. But there's always that thing that's saying, okay, so when's my turn? And
Right.
I think if I didn't have God, I probably wouldn't still be playing football, because I've seen so much happen. And this is what happens in life, is that we see so many people achieve, we see ourselves maybe not achieve what we feel like we should achieve, and we
Mm.
see time consistently go by where things just don't seem to look the way they're supposed to look. And if you don't have anything to hold on to, the thing I always have to hold on to is the fact that God promised me something, and for as long as I can remember, God hasn't promised me something and it's not happened. So
Brilliant. Brilliant.
the
Okay.
whole time while I'm waiting, it's almost like, well, God, I don't know when this is going to happen, but I'm sure it will at some stage. So let me enjoy waiting, and let me enjoy improving and getting myself ready. Like, I used to write down all the time what my speech would be when I signed a professional contract. I used to write down what my tweets would be. And it would prepare me
Okay.
mentally, because I think in that time of waiting, it's always important to envision the day that comes, because if you stop hoping, if you stop envisioning, then you're getting further and further away, because you're not actually ready to receive what it is you're asking for. So for me, I love to, even now, there's things that I'm praying for the future, and
Yeah.
I'd envision myself in football kits, or in different things. Like, I'll look at it and scoring hat tricks or whatever it is, I'll envision it and I'll think about it, like, what am I going to say when it happens? Like, because I'm preparing myself for when it does happen. And I think that helps to bide a lot of time, because then your effort is focused on, it's going to happen, I just don't know when. So let me stop worrying about when, and let me just keep preparing as it comes, because it could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be next month, it could be next year. But am I ready for when it happens?
You're ready. So what kind of a conversation that we've had, and I like that, because it might not have come yet, but you begin to prepare your heart and you begin to prepare your mind. And I never did get to hear that speech, Iris, so you need to do that speech for me again. But so who do you talk to? I mean, I remember a little bit of those times,
Mm,
and when you were playing for those clubs and all that. But during that period when a young person is not where they want to be, do you understand? They can see where you can see where you want to be, but
yeah.
you're not there. who are the anchors? Who are the people? I mean, I've heard maybe sometimes we don't want to go to our parents, and sometimes, who are the people, young people, talk to when you're going through this kind of pressures where stuff doesn't seem to be working out?
Well, I'm grateful that I had people like you, Ryan, obviously my
Say it
brother, my
again,
best
say it
friend.
again, say it
Yeah,
again.
and even to be fair, Uncle Bummy, even though we didn't speak regularly, there was always God always seemed to find the right person to speak to me at the right time. Like there wasn't always this constant thing of every day somebody's talking to me to encourage me, but it would always be kind of when I'm hitting a little slump mentally because I've just had a game and I've done well and I'm still not where I want to be, somebody always would come at the right time, whether it was you, whether it was Ryan, Uncle Bummy, even Zai and people from church. Like the church community was very helpful for me in that time, as well as obviously my family, because like obviously everybody saw me where I said I wanted to go. So they were in faith with me on the journey. So
Mhm.
it was it was it was incredible because I look back on it now and I see where I was and I see where I am now, and it still shocks me every day when I go into training. I'm like, wait, I'm actually a professional footballer. And I thank God every day for all of the people that didn't say to me when I was in the place of nothingness, oh, are you sure football's for you? Because it's often that we find those people that are very real with us when we need people who are very faith with us. Do you get what I mean?
Mm.
And I'm fortunate that the majority of the people that were around me more, church folk, my family, Ryan and close friends, were the voices I was hearing more because that's what was pushing me to continue to walk towards and run towards the destiny that I was called to. So yeah, my anchors really were everything I was hearing in church, the people I was hearing in church, my church family, my family, because they know how much work I've put in. And the people that were closer to me, like you, Ryan, and Uncle Boomy, were knowing how much work I was putting in, how many times I was missing church because I was doing a training session, or how many times I would come to church after training on Christmas morning
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Even when we didn't have training, I was doing it by myself. Like you guys all saw those moments, and it was almost like you guys were the bedrock for me to, if I ever fell in confidence or fell in knowing, it was like you guys would go, boom, get back up. You're not
Okay.
supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here. And you need people like that. And especially as young people, as much as we don't like to admit it because we believe I am young, hear me roar, I'm strong,
Yes.
I'm this, I'm that. Like, yeah, we have to be real.
Yeah,
And
raw. Okay.
the reality is that the previous generation, a lot of the time, are the people we need to hold us and the
Say,
people we need to stand
say that
upon.
again. Could you kind of like say that again?
Yeah, the generation before us are the
Yes.
people we need to be standing on their shoulders. We don't need to be building new foundations
All
when
right. Okay.
the previous generation have set foundations with what they know. So instead of us to move somewhere else and find another acreage of land and start building our own house, why don't we use the resources we have to fix the broken parts that they couldn't fix and build on top of what they've already built? And I think the the
That's
generation
interesting.
we're in now, if we don't use the past to inform the future, then we're never going to get where we're supposed to get to, because nothing progresses when you continue to start things again.
Okay. But that's interesting because some of the conversations we've had has been like, there's this divide, do you understand, between the old generation and the new generation, which is something that continues to intrigue me. And it's things like, we don't speak the same language, we don't seem to understand each other, but you're coming from another perspective as to build on it. So what would you say, what would you say about the gap, about the fact that sometimes, you're trying to relate to us and I can't remember all my words now because
Yeah,
I know you guys have
yeah,
made fun of me for years. But you
yeah,
know, when,
yeah.
when you begin to talk about that divide, you know, that do we understand? Do you believe that we understand you guys?
I think there's a lack of understanding on both sides, but I
Ah,
think it's more frustration from the older generation, and less understanding from our generation. And I say this with the utmost respect to my generation, but it's just the facts. The older generation are frustrated because, just like the generation before them, we have access to more resources, we have access to more finance, we have access to more information, revelation, academic qualifications than the previous generation, but we're not necessarily as advanced as we should be. That's what the older generation believes, and they're right. But our generation, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reinvent the wheel with everything. And that's the reason why there's the frustration from the older generation, because they're looking at it and going, well, we've already built a foundation for you. All you need to do is build from that, not build your own. Because what's the best thing to do if for example, you're older than me and you've done a law degree, and you know information about, let's say, young people, and I say I want to go and do a youth project to work with young people, and you have years and years of information that you can give me, and I decide I'm going to go and just start something with no information just because I
right.
have an idea and I have passion. Our generation has passion, but we don't value wisdom as much. And I've been
Okay.
studying Proverbs, so I'm learning a whole lot that wisdom prevents so many problems. And
Okay.
for me, I've realized that if I listened to, whether it's my parents, people like you, the older generation, more in certain other areas, I probably wouldn't have got myself into some situations that I've been in, because I was focused on who's telling me this. Like, oh, you're telling me this because you want to stop me from doing it. You want to stop me from being happy. You want to stop me from enjoying myself. And that's the lens that this generation looks at things from. That the older generation, when they give wisdom, are trying to prevent rather than propel or prevent. And
But do you think sometimes, I'm not trying to diss my generation. I love my generation. I've got no problem with that.
yeah, yeah,
I don't think we're doing too badly. But I appreciate that because not very often do you find somebody bigging us up. But do you think there's also some part we can play to help
100%.
you understand us? Do you understand? Because
Yeah,
it is true, there is a foundation we've got that the young generation don't have. But sometimes is it the fact that how we put it across? Because like you said, sometimes what
hmm
you're hearing is mama is saying and papa is saying, but I mean I can find all that on Google. So is
yeah,
it that
yeah.
sometimes is that a way? Do we need to change our stance or are we doing okay?
Yes, and yes. You're doing okay,
Okay.
but obviously everything can always be done better. And I think one of the things I would say about the older generation is they need to understand the fact that their words carry so much weight. So they need to watch what they say. Do you understand what I mean? Because
Okay.
when, for example, as a young person, obviously I don't see things the same way a lot of my generation do, only because I've grown up with older people. So I'm a bit more old headed. Do you get what I mean? Than I
Mhm.
maybe should be, or than maybe others are. So it's all about the way something is said and what is said. Because, for example, if you come to me and your premise for what you're saying, whenever you say something, is that young people are lazy, young people aren't bothered, and then you say to me, oh, Ira, this doesn't look as good as it should look, I'm not going to take it as, oh, she's trying to help me. I'm going to take it as her premise is that young people are lazy and young people are good for nothing. So whenever she says something to me, that's what I hear. I don't hear the feedback. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's very important that the generation before us watches their declarations over the next generation,
Okay.
because part of it will be self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll have the people that go, well, they say I'm lazy, so what's the point? Let me just be mediocre.
All right.
Or you'll have the people that try to push against the grain, but they don't do it in the right way, because now they ignore everything that the older generation says, because they're trying to be so distant from what they've heard that they don't take the gem that's rolled in the poop. Let's just say it like that. Because a lot of the time, the older generation gives gems, but it's wrapped in poo. Like, because it's said so viciously or violently, or even just critically. You have to understand who you're dealing with when you speak to whoever you're speaking to. Like, you can speak to me in a certain way that you might not be able to speak to other young people in. Why? Because we've built that relationship, and I know where your heart is towards me. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's about building that relationship first, where you have the right to now speak in that way to that person. I think the older generation is very traditional, in the sense of, they believe, I'm older than you, you're younger than me, so my wisdom I have to give you, whether you want to receive it or not. I'm going to tell you whether I've earned the right to tell you or not. I'm just going to tell you, and you just have to take it. But this generation is very relational in the way that it comes with information. We care less about the content and more about the container. So we're worried about, who is it that's telling me I'm great, than, oh, they've told me I'm great. Who is it that's telling me I need to improve? Do I have a relationship with them? Did they earn the right to tell me I need to improve? Or is it just somebody that's trying to break me down? So we forget the content, we forget the gem, because of the person that said it. That's why sometimes people will change in life, and they would have changed the way they think about you. And because all you have in your head is, this person hates me, this person talks about me disrespectfully, you're not going to take anything they say the right way, because of that perception that you already have. And I
Okay.
think, yeah, that generation, a lot of that generation, not all of them, like Auntie Caroline said.
We need to. Yeah, and I'm looking at my sister on there, Kemi, saying it's supposed to be constructive criticism. You don't just come across and just criticize and just say, um, you know, I know this,
Yeah,
and because I know this. So it's not enough to know, it's important to know how to say it as well.
exactly.
And how to now, does that even happen in families? Because sometimes, sometimes it comes across and you're like, well, I'm your dad, I'm your mom, so I know. So
Yeah,
do young people get that even from parents as
yeah,
well? Do you think
100%.
parents also need to earn that right, or do they have that God-given right to say it?
They have the God-given right. However, I still believe that in
Hello,
the
Tim.
parenting, they need to. The parent's role is to be a coach, essentially, and as a coach, you need to tell your players, or tell um your players. You need to tell your players whatever you need to get the best out of your players. Does that make sense? So
Of
yes,
course.
you give constructive criticism, but as a parent, you're a coach, which means the incentive behind anything you say has to be very clear. Your incentive is, I want to improve you. I want to make you the best player I can make you. I want to make you the best man or best woman I can make you. And that has to be very plain, very simple, and very emboldened. Do you get what I mean? Whenever you're speaking, that has to be declared over them more than your criticism. Does that make sense? Your
Okay.
incentive has to be, look, I I want you to achieve. And sometimes as parents, you may even have to tell them that before you say what you're going to say, which is, look, whenever you're doing what you do, I want you to be the best. So when I say that you need to, when I watch your performance, or I watched your this, or I'm seeing your grades, I know you can do so much better than that. The way it is said is so, so key. And I
Okay.
know there's probably parents on here who have um, perspectives, but it's very, very important that parents show respect in the way that they speak still. even though they don't necessarily have to earn it, because God has already given them that role over somebody. It's not something that you've had to earn by, you earned the right to be someone's football coach. No, this is what I'm born into. I am your child. I am your son. So you have the divine authority over me. However, that doesn't mean that in your instruction, it has to be lauded over me and used as something to oppress me. Rather, it needs to be something to release me to where I'm supposed to be going. That's the difference.
I see. So the parent comes across. I like the word. Well, you would have used coach. I'm not sure which other what else you would have used. And there's like Caroline said, you still have to be respectful to your children.
Yeah.
Your criticism, like Kemi said, your constructive criticism should be geared at building them up. And also, I think somebody said in the chat, it's about building some kind of rapport.
Yeah, exactly.
Between the parents and the child. And I think I like something that you said about the fact that yes, you've got the God-given right, but at the same time, you also think so. Parents need to also earn the respect. You have the respect because you're the parent, but at the same time, there's a way you can relate to your child that also allows that respect to be earned.
100%.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So for your contemporaries, tell them a lot of times there's been struggles between, and in recent times there's been a lot of struggles in families with parents. They want me to do this. For example, you went the line of football.
Yeah.
That is not always a popular thing, although it's getting better these days.
Yeah.
So what would you say, I mean, where you've made a choice as a young person and you have your parents thinking, well, let me go back home a little. Me, I'm an African woman. Eh? You have to,
Yeah, of course.
You have to represent.
Yeah.
How do you still think there's still those traditional values, or if you are in a situation where you believe you're supposed to be something and you've got your parents saying, no, this is what you want. If you had a contemporary, one of your peers come to you and say, I have that kind of issue, is that something you say? Because I know you had the support to go into football, but you also got an education.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, I'm an idealist. So the way I went about what I went about was, okay, if this is a requirement, I believe that much in God that I can achieve what I want to achieve and still get what is required from your perspective, your preference. That's not necessarily the case for everyone. So let me put that caveat out there. Not everybody has to fulfill their parents' preferences as well as what God wants them to do. But I did that from the sake of, I don't ever want there to be any sort of breach or any sort of stain on what I've achieved that God wants me to achieve, because I chose that over because I have to live with my parents every day. Do you get what I mean? I have to, unless I move out, I have to be in their face. So it's not like I can just ignore what they're saying and do something else. But one of the things I would say is I pray this prayer all the time, is especially if like my business wasn't necessarily flavor of the month as it started. Like it wasn't something that my parents necessarily wanted me to start because you're a footballer. And I think that narrative has to be broken in a sense, because like I think I spoke about it last year when I spoke about Independence Day for the young people. There has to be a moment in your life where God speaks to you for you. God shows you what you're going to do for you. Purpose isn't something that your parents decide. Purpose is something that God's already decided. So what your parents prefer, although it may be good for you, it may be a respectable job, being a doctor, being a lawyer, whatever it is, if that's not what God wants you to do, I always pray this prayer and I say, Lord, if you want me to be this and my parents want me to be that, show them. Because there has to be a moment where you can't fight your parents. You can't tell them you're not my parents. You can't tell me what to do. Do you get what I like? Because they can. But you have to get to this moment where God shows up for you in that way. Because if he doesn't, how do I then know that that's what God wanted me to do? If he doesn't even take the time to show up for me in that moment. And that's the prayer that I always pray. And it doesn't always happen in the dream form where your parents wake up in the morning and I had a dream and you're supposed to be a footballer. No, it's not that. Sometimes, like for me, I was doing some ministry online and it wasn't received well at home because, oh, you're too active on your social media and all of this sort of stuff. Like, you need to focus, all that sort of stuff. And a football agent actually wanted to sign me because of my ministry on social media, having never seen me play football before.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
And in that moment, my dad went, wait, so I've just kind of been slapped in the face here. That's what he said. He said, I feel like God is slapping me in the face because I've told him not to do that. And all of a sudden, the only reason why you're here is because you've seen this. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
I believe that when God has called you to do something, when God has called for something to happen, you need to pursue it with God. You do, with the utmost respect to your parents. So you're not doing it out of spite for them, because your motive for what you're doing has to be pure. Otherwise, God has no incentive to respond. Don't now wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to be an astronaut just to spite my parents. Do you get what I mean? No, it's if you're called to do something and God has called you to do that, he's shown you visions and dreams, pray on it, prepare, and God will make up that little difference of preference. Because parents always respect, they always will respect what God has to say. They have to, because they're going to remember a moment in their life where somebody in their life didn't necessarily agree with what they had to do or what they had to say. And they're going to remember, well, that's what God told me to do, and I stuck by it, and look at where we are now. So they'll always remember that moment that happened to them, because every person in the world has been through one of them experiences. But I think that from a younger age, I think parents need to endorse a relationship led by God more, and an individuality in the individual, rather than this structured, rigid, I tell you everything and that's just the way it is lifestyle. Because even when it comes to your relationship with God, how do I then know that God is real for me if I've never tested and tasted and seen him for myself? If I have to rely on my parents' prayers to get me through the night, then how do I know for myself that God is real? Because when that gets challenged at 3 a.m. in the morning and I'm really, really worried, how do I can't wake up my parents and be like, oh, mom, dad, what if they're in deep sleep? Do you get what I mean? So it's important that that is cultivated by yourself. It has to. Because when you're married, when you go to uni, like I say to all people going to uni, before you go to uni, make sure you and God are on the same page. Because if you're not, university will slap you upside down and it will ruin you because you have no foundation. Your parents are not there in your bedroom at uni. They're not there at the club with you at uni. So they're not there in the missed lecture at uni. So if you don't have those foundational things in place before you leave, then just say goodbye to the first year of uni until you realize.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Well, to me it does. I'm sure it makes sense to all the people that are listening as well. I'm not sure who's running this thing here. Is it you or me?
Sorry, I like to talk.
Oh, I know that. I'm here to listen to you. I've just got the page. You're the one talking, and I'm really glad you're saying that, because a lot of times, that's one thing I'm very interested in about the individual. And a lot of times, I think there's always that struggle to be yourself, be authentic, be who you are, and sometimes because there's that preconceived notion that this is how my child is supposed to be. This is what my
Yeah,
child is
100.
supposed to do. There's no opportunity, and every child is different. I mean, I've dealt with loads of you guys, and gosh, you
Mm,
guys are different. You
very.
know, you know, and it's important to allow a child, a young person, to be who they are,
Mm,
not so that they can run riot, but to be able to identify who they are and allow them to become, to come into a
yeah, yeah.
graduate, come into, I mean, being more of a guide rather than, somebody who's whipping them up the side of their head and telling them this is who you're supposed to be. Now,
Yeah.
one thing I'm also interested in is you seem to have your hands in a lot of things. For those
Yeah, yeah.
who came in a little early, who came in a little later, this is Ira.
Mm,
Ira is my son. I call him my son.
yeah,
Okay, and as
100%.
I can see, I'm going to get up a little bit. I'm representing as well, and at the back I've got Aunty T as well. So I'm very well branded, and all that. I used to tell Ira that whenever I got my paycheck, what did I used to say? I pay my tithe, pay my offering, and then buy
And then
something.
Ira. Yeah.
So now, one thing is you've got a lot of passions. You're doing quite a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
things. One thing that also concerns parents is when they see is as if a child is doing this and then you're doing that and then doing that. And
Hmm.
sometimes you're like, you gotta, get
Yeah,
your act
yeah.
together. What exactly are you about? How do you balance all that? How do you make sure that, you're not a jack of all trades and you make sure that you've
Um,
got your focus right?
that's interesting. One of the things I've always said since I've been young is I want to leave the world empty. Um,
Mm.
and I don't have a passion for a lot of things. I like a lot of things, but I believe that God puts burning desires in people's heart and problems in people's hearts for them that they're called to fix. And one of in many areas of my life, the things that I do are based upon things that annoy me to the point where I have to do something about it. So I believe because it's based around that desire, it doesn't feel like I'm doing as much because they all flow from the same desire, which is not necessarily a desire to fix, but a desire to pour out, a desire to develop, a desire to show God in as many ways as possible. So I can give an example of what it is in each area of my life. So I have football, which is the main one. I'm not in football to just be a good footballer. I'm in football mainly because I had a dream when I was younger. And I was standing in front of God, and I said to God, after watching a football match, and I just fell in love with just that stage. The stage just seemed to do something to me. And I said to God, look, if you take me to that stage, I'll bring all of those people to you. That's what I said. And I've had a passion for that. And that's what's driven me to get to where I get to. That's what drives me every day. It's not that I can get famous. It's not that people love me and think that I'm amazing. It's that influence that allows me to impact people that drives me every day. The fact that people who are supporting Grimsby will be on this live because they know me shows me that that in seed form is working. It's
Right.
not because I'm this amazing footballer who wants to earn £100 billion. No,
I think
it's
you're
not that.
amazing.
Thank you. And I believe that God has called me to be as well. But the priority is to become influential and have impact. But the impact isn't for me to now have 30,000 t-shirts with my name on it. Go buy this. Look, be like Ira, whatever. No, not at all. And I think that's just strategically why God gave me PC London as the vision, because he knew that when I got to the top, I love clothes. I love wearing different clothes. I love trying out different clothes. He knew that when I got to the top, there needed to be a way to use another one of my passions to do another thing that means a lot to me, which is evangelism. I love to share the word of God. I'll put it in any conversation as much as possible. Any DM that a fan sends to me, I'll little drop it in as much as possible. But I've always had a problem with traditional evangelism. I don't like it personally. I don't, because I don't believe it connects to the person where they need to be connected to. I feel like it's more of a performative show of, look at me, look how many scriptures I know, than it is about the soul that you're trying to reach. So with everything that we do with PC, it's evangelism because we're trying to explore as many creative ways as possible to share the word of God that will touch not the Christians, the non-Christians, but that the Christians can relate to and where to go and be the evangelist they're called to be in the world. That's why we don't do typical John 10:10 merch with scriptures all over it, because how am I supposed to reach the non-Christian with the scripture when they're offended by the scripture?
Right.
So
Okay.
one of my passions is how do we circumnavigate that offense and still touch their heart? And that's why I'm always praying for new and creative ways to find merch, to find t-shirts, jumpers, whatever it is. How can we evangelize with this? And that's why my personal favorite so far, the It's All Love range, which we just brought out, it means a lot to me because it is centered around God sending his son to the earth, but nobody knows that. All they know is it's all love. But what is God? God is love. So you'll hear people saying the statement, it's all love, it's all love, it's all love. But the prayer that's behind that, the motive that's behind that, every time that merch is worn, it is ministering. Because I believe that it can soften the heart. As they're wearing it, I believe that God can do, and God wants to do in this generation, creative miracles. And I'm not beyond the thought that God can use one of these to change somebody's life and bring them to him. So yeah, there's that. And then obviously I do mentoring as well, which I have a big problem with young men in this generation. I don't like the statement men are trash, but it's relevant.
No, they're not.
And
No.
but I'll say there's validity in that statement only because men haven't been trained. Men haven't been led, men haven't been held accountable. And I believe we've brought up a generation of men that do things to seek acceptance from their friends rather than to be accountable to their friends. So for me, I decided, well, I didn't decide. I wanted to do it for years and I didn't have the courage to do it because I didn't think I was a perfect man yet. And God slapped me up last year and said, excuse me, now it's time. So I sent a message out covertly saying, if anybody needs a mentor, I might have someone for you. They didn't know it was going to be me, but literally, I think it was seven to 10 young men, some through random conversations. They messaged me on Instagram at a random time and said, Ira, I need to talk to you. And then by the end of the conversation, they're a mentee. And some of them responded to that Instagram post. And the way God has used what he brought me through to help these young men has been amazing. Like, I'm seeing young men who would have run into a relationship before because they feel like they want a girl, they feel lonely, who are listening to this program and learning from it and saying, actually, I don't even know who I am. So let me not mess up someone else when I don't know who I am. And for me, that's one of the greatest joys, is that some of the mistakes I made, because God has taught me and kind of rewinded me through all of them and shown me the root of why I did what I did and brought me back to Eden, I'm able to now teach young men before they make their mistakes.
Right. So we've got all this going on and it's brilliant. And I know we're running after time, and I knew that was going to happen because you and I know you've got so much. So much. You talk more than me, which is a record. So I guess I have to buy It's All Love now. I think that's the only one I don't have. have I missed any? Because I was going to wear covered, but
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit cold, so I felt you know. But that's brilliant. I mean, Ira, you've got so much to give. And I'm really,
Mm.
really, I'm really proud of you. I'm really
Thank
proud
you.
of
Thank
you
you.
all the time. And I'm so, so honored that you've come on Young and Strong just to come and share a little bit of what your life has been. I know there's so much story behind the glory, and
Mm.
it's
A lot.
just a joy. It's just a joy, for us to now be talking about it and be talking
Yeah.
about how far you've come and be able to tell your contemporaries and peers and parents and older ones and younger ones that,
Mm.
you know what, center stage is God and everything
Mm.
else flows through him. You're a
Yeah.
footballer. Most of the time when people hear footballers, this is not the conversation you have. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
brilliant that even there God is planting footballers. And
Mm.
I think it's also an encouragement for us, parents, for mothers, for aunties, that there is no sector God can plant a
Yeah.
child.
Exactly.
You don't kind of like think, oh, this is how it used to be. This doesn't used to work. That might be where God is planting us. Now we've got a few minutes, and I'm going to say, Ira, what would you tell your contemporaries? What would you tell the young people? You've got only 3 minutes because I know, knowing you, you're going to go into a lot of some. Don't use up all my time. So
I won't. I won't. I won't. I think I've kind of said it all, but I think, like I say, the most important thing I can give, the most important advice I can ever give to somebody is develop a relationship with God where you hear God and you see God and you understand God and you obey God. Because everything I've achieved to this point, everything that happened in 2020 in my life was through the the knowledge of God, the wisdom of God, and the movement of God. I was given the word at the end of 2019 that 2020 would be my year to take action. So I said, God, what does that mean? And he said, whatever I tell you to do, whenever I tell you to do it, just do it. So essentially, it was a year of obedience. And as you know me, I'm very antsy. So I like to just do things. So now I started to develop a passion for waiting. But God was like, no, whenever I tell you to do something, just do it. So I'm thinking, so now, God, you just taught me about patience. And now you're now asking me to just get on stuff.
yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like, why? But it made sense because as I reviewed 2020 and I sat down with God before the end of 2020, he showed me there were so many things he told me to do that I did that we look at now and it's like everybody looks at it and it's like, oh my gosh, Ira, you had such a great year. Like everything I wrote down in 2019 that God said was going to happen in 2020 happened.
Wow. You
Like,
gotta keep me in on that juice.
like every single thing happened. And I sat there and I was thinking, is it that easy? And the thing is when you obey God, it is. But you need a relationship with God where God knows he can tell you, go 100 miles an hour, go 5 miles an hour, go no miles an hour, and you'll just do it.
Brilliant. Okay.
And that's what I would encourage.
Well, you can see, I'm sure everyone, I can see my sister Betty saying that we've got to come back, the dynamic duo of Auntie Tia and Ira. Thank you so, so much. I'm sure everyone, I mean, that's been part of this has found this very, very encouraging, very interesting, very motivational. Your story is a great story, and I thank God that it's a God story. It's not like yeah, come listen to this great man. He's got lots to say. But listening to
Yeah.
somebody who God has worked through, like I said,
Mm.
I know little bits and pieces of it, and every time I see you, I am proud of you. So
Mm.
you've got one proud mama here saying, well done.
Amen. Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming to be part of Young and Strong. I'm sure sometime later in the year. Thank you, Kemi. I'm so glad that you enjoyed our conversation. That's all my sisters down there.
Oh,
Um,
lovely.
and thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I'm sure later in the year we might come back again
Yeah,
talk
anytime.
more about your mentorship program.
Yeah,
If
just
there's
message me
anything you're
anytime.
doing you want me to talk about, Auntie T is here to talk about what you're doing. I love you,
Mm,
son. All the best. Thank you,
thank you.
everyone, for coming. Young and Strong will be back again in 2 weeks when I'll be having another lovely, lovely young person coming to talk to us. This is for young people, but as you can see, every time you see me, I'm about 10 decades, I mean, 1 decade younger than
Of
before.
course.
Thanks, Ira. Love you, son. Thank you,
Love you too.
everyone. God
God
bless
bless.
you, and good
God bless.
night. Good night, everyone.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.